Hey, it's Ben from Recruiting Insight, and it's a great day to recruit. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Recruiting Insight podcast. Now this week, we're going to be joined by Darrell Morgan from Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Realty. Now, Darrell is the Director of Operations for HomeServices and oversees offices in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, Hagerstown, Maryland, and Martinsburg, West Virginia. Now, I wanted to bring Darrell onto the podcast because he consistently, year over year, brings in over 20 high-quality, experienced agents to his office. For a busy leader who also is managing those three offices, this is quite a feat. He practices the old adage, great leaders attract talent. Darrell has figured out how to make this happen, and he's going to share his tactics and methodologies with you today. You'll walk away from today's podcast with some things that you can start to apply right away and improve your recruiting efforts. Now, let's get started. Super excited to have you on the podcast today. I know a lot of people are going to really get a lot of value from what they're going to hear from you today. And the reason I really wanted to have you on is because it's just so rare to connect with somebody who is so consistent about delivering experienced agent results. You set a lot of appointments, and you get hires from that on a consistent basis. And so, super excited about what you have to share. So
great.
So as we get started today, just a little quick background. Can you tell me a little about your company, Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices, and and a little bit about your background, kind of how
Sure.
you got in leadership.
Sure. So I've been with Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices for 10 years, and I've been in real estate for 20. So HomeServices actually recruited me a while back. I've been working on trying to get me over on board, and I said no for a very long time. But since I've been here, I've learned that we've got 36 offices. We have offices in West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and we have about 1,000 agents. So it was the right fit. It was the right culture for me. And so I've never looked back since I've been here.
Okay. So it's interesting that you're part of the recruiting process as somebody who was getting recruited, and then now, of course, you're
Right.
doing the recruiting. So you play both sides to it. So how'd
Right.
you get into leadership? I think you were recruited as an agent originally, right?
Right. So I got into real estate back in 2006. The company was called Jack Gone
Okay.
under the NRT umbrella. And so I only wanted to sell. I only wanted to list properties and work with buyers. And I had a manager back then that saw something in me that she said, and I'll never forget this. She goes, "You have no idea how good you're going to be."
Mhm.
And so she tried to get me into leadership management, and I had no interest at all. But she was persuasive, and she, talked about it enough, and I finally started entertaining the idea and met with a few people. And um, long story short, I ended up getting into leadership back then. So I've been managing and been in the leadership role for probably 16 out of my 20 years in real estate.
Okay, got it. Okay, good. Well, let's delve in a little bit on the topic here, which is really how to be more successful at experienced agent recruiting and just really be able to do this consistently. So I started coaching your group a little over a year ago, and there's other folks in the group. You've been able to get a lot more hires than others, even not just in your group, but also across the country as well. Can you walk me through a little bit what your process looks like? What process are you using? How are you getting your appointments? How are you getting those conversions?
Sure. So one of the things that I started doing, and I've taken recruiting serious since day one that I got in leadership. I can't say that all managers do that across the nation as well. I think
Mhm.
either you can recruit or you can, and so it's very challenging for some folks. But my process has always been I would actually go in and look at small brokerages around my area and my footprint, and I would study who they are, do the research, figure out what kind of volume they're doing, what kind of production they're doing, and then I would basically take all of their names and put their phone numbers and all that information in my phone, and then I would just start working one by one and start doing all the reach outs and trying to get in my appointments. I don't pick up the phone and call. I only text for my appointments, and that's been very successful.
Interesting. Okay. So this is an initial contact. You're primarily reaching out by text.
Yes.
Do you have a little bit of context when in those texts because of the research you've done?
Yes. So I don't really go into what their volume is or what the production is. I know that on the back end. I know, if there's somebody that I really want to focus on because they might be a $3 million producer. I'd like to see them go to 5 million.
Yeah.
But I already know those numbers and I don't share that with them. And in all honesty, when that even comes up in an actual recruiting appointment, they have no idea what their numbers are. Nine
Mm.
times out of 10, they have no idea what their numbers are. But I'll send a text out, and it's usually something on the lines of, "Hey, this is Darrell Morgan with Berkshire Hathaway. Um, I believe truly that this is a business where we should be building strong business relationships, and I want to know who my agents are working with on a regular basis. So I'd love to maybe grab some lunch and do a meet and greet." And a lot of times that right there will work. That's the dialogue I use.
Okay. So you've used this with a lot of different agents over the years, and seems to be. What say is your success rate on that? I mean, how many of those turn into appointments?
Um, If I do, say I do 10 reach outs a day, just for an example, I've had some times where I can get five people that will be willing to do it, and I've had days where I might get zero. So it's really hit or miss. And I think it really depends on how busy they are. If I catch them in a moment where they might be at a settlement or they're in an appointment or what have you, and then they forget to come back to me, I'll have to reach out again. And sometimes what I've found out here recently is a lot of people feel like it could be a scam and it's not real. So I'll have to follow up and let them know that, it's not a scam and it is really me and it's a real it's a real reach out. And I've had some people come back to me. It's like, I'm glad you reached back out because I really thought it was a scam. So
Okay.
I've learned that here recently.
So how many reach outs are you doing with these folks? Is it two, three, four? How about before you, hey, stop bugging them?
Um, well, some it'll be a week. I'll do a week at a time. Like if I reach out today and I don't hear back, I might reach out, next Monday or what have you. Some will reach out back to me and say, "Hey, I'm not interested, but I appreciate you reaching out to me and good luck or whatever." But at the end of the day, I think it's just a matter of me consistently doing it and staying in touch, trying to get the appointment.
Okay. So we kind of got the framework, of the general framework of what you're doing, how you're getting the appointments. We're going to delve into that a little more detail here in a minute. But just what would you say was your best recruiting win over the last year? And can you tell us that story?
A little bit, yeah. So it was right around the end of last year. We actually had a team that left our company, and I did not know who they were. I've never met them. They were in a different office. But when I saw on our outgoing report that says, "Hey, who's come in, who's gone out, who's made changes, what have you," and I saw this team had left, I was kind of shocked. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna reach out. I feel like it's our job, it's our obligation to find out. Maybe is there something that happened, something that could have been prevented that we could have kept them. And so I made a reach out, got an appointment, and I met with the two team leads. It went really well. Next appointment, which I got, the whole team came. Um, and basically asked a few questions around the table. Would you consider ever coming back? And they all said yes. So at the end of the day, it was probably 6, 7 appointments when it was all said and done. The team has actually grown since then as well. And they actually a couple went to Nashville. So they went to convention and absolutely loved it. So super happy to have them back. They're super happy to be back. And for me, that was probably my biggest win last year.
Okay. So what kind of production was the team doing?
They were right around, I think it was right around 15 million in closed volume, and their goal for this year is 25.
Okay.
But they're well on their way. They're doing
Got it.
super well.
And then how long were they away? In that
About 4 months.
4 months. Okay. So
Yeah,
this is a quick turnaround. So
it was.
okay.
But I will say this, if I hadn't reached out, we would have never had the opportunity to get him back.
Yeah.
I mean, so that to me was the win. The company's super excited to have him back, and they're excited to be back. So, um, but yeah, I would say that was probably my biggest win last year.
Okay.
Very true.
Well, let's delve a little bit in a little more detail here on really if you boil down recruiting, it really boils down to setting appointments Right.
Yep.
I always tell no appointments, no hires. You aren't going to hire anybody without meeting with them. So setting appointments, having the appointment, actually conducting that appointment in an appropriate way or a helpful way, and then finally, you got to be able to have some sort of follow-up period and closing of this person. So we're just going to kind
Mhm.
of go into each of those areas and look specifically at kind of what your methodologies are and what you're doing and what you may be doing different. I know you know what you're doing. I know a little more of what
Mhm.
everyone else is doing, so I can kind of
Right.
differentiate a little bit. But let's start with the appointments. You mentioned before that you're getting a lot of these appointments via text,
Mhm.
and you shared a little bit on the script. Anything more that you're doing really to get those appointments set or to be successful at that piece of the business?
I think that's really all that I'm doing. I mean, I know some managers still want to pick up the phone and call, and I swear by text, and they're actually shocked by that. I'll share it real quick too. As you know, I sat on a panel out in Nashville for recruiting and growth, and I had a person come up to me afterwards and ask me, "You only get your appointments via text?" And I'm like, "Yes, that's all I do." And she was shocked. So yeah, it's me reaching out, using the right dialogue, getting the appointment, and then once I go to those appointments. I let them guide the conversation, Ben. It's not me sitting there selling the brokerage. It's not me there bringing a bunch of information to try to talk about what we offer, all of our tools and services, all of the marketing. Like that never comes up until it has to come up. And a lot of times they lead the way. I let them guide the conversation. It's about building the relationship. They have to trust me. They have to like who I am. They have to be the right fit for our culture. So, it's a two-way street. And so, we go on that first appointment. I want to know a little bit about them, and that's how I start the meeting. Tell me about you. And so they lead the way. Um, it might go for an hour, hour and a half, and then I set the next appointment. We have another appointment, and then it just keeps going from there. And as we build that relationship, that's to me when all the magic starts to happen because yes, they might ask about splits. They might ask about, what do we offer and all those different things. But that's really not what's important in the beginning of these meetings at
Yeah.
all.
So how much time do you spend prospecting and doing the text and getting those outreaches done? So the pre-time, I guess, before the appointment happens. How much time would you
So,
spend?
so when I would take an actual entire roster of a brokerage, um, by the time I would do the research, get everything entered in my phone, figure out what their volume was individually, um, that's pretty time consuming in itself. We're talking a few hours for sure.
Mhm.
The time I spend on just prospecting as far as sending out and trying to get the appointments, I might spend an hour, hour and a half on certain days. But then I was averaging 4 or 5, 6 appointments a week. So for me to try to prospect every day was very challenging. But again, when I'm going on that many appointments and I'm rescheduling those appointments at the end of that individual appointment, I didn't have to prospect as much because I'm so busy with the people I'm already working with in the pipeline. So, so I would say, when I would really sit down and focus on just prospecting and sending out my messaging to get appointments, I'd say probably an hour, hour and a half.
Okay. So that's for a week worth of prospecting, or is that a day, or how much
I would
time?
say probably a couple times a week is what I would
Okay.
do.
So you might
So
be
maybe 2 days a week.
between 2 and 3 hours,
Yeah.
and you would do it in bigger time
Yes.
chunks than we were talking about. So often we talk about doing 30-minute time blocks.
Yeah.
That didn't work as well for you. You'd rather do so if you did 30-minute time blocks every day, you'd be at 2.5 hours for the week. You're getting that 2.5, 3 hours in. You're just doing it in a couple different time blocks.
And I think the reason for that, Ben, is because if I'm hitting a roster of say 15, 20 agents, I felt like it was a win for me if I got one appointment. If I'm reaching out to 20 of those agents at one shot and I get one appointment, that's a win. If I only reach out to like two or three agents on a particular day and I get no response or I don't have no success on getting an appointment, then I felt like it wasn't a win for the day. So I think the more I reached out at one time to get an appointment, felt like it was probably more rewarding and a win for me.
Okay. So do you have a strategy of just, hey, I'm not going to quit until I get an appointment here, or is
Well,
it?
let me just share this with you. So before I got into management, whenever I was doing sell, I worked for sell by owners and expired, which is a lot of the same way we prospect, for those is how I do my recruiting, building those relationships. And I have a funny story where I was out. I wouldn't go to my house in the evening. I would leave the office. I would go drive around looking for a new for sale by owner to work. And I had my son, who was very, very young at the time, sitting in the back seat, driving around with me. And I'm like, we're not going home until I find a new for sale by owner to work. And I finally found one, and everybody was, he was all excited. My wife was actually with me. And they were like, oh my God, we can go home now because he found one to work. But that's how I was committed, super committed. And that's the way I am with recruiting.
Yeah. So it's a mindset that, hey, I'm going to get something here and I'm going
Yep.
to stick with it until I get it.
Yep.
Recognizing that it sounds like there's still a lot of reps here. There's still a lot
Hmm.
of outreaches. There's still a lot of maybe not getting something back right away, but
Right.
you're doing a lot of reps and primarily doing it through text, of course. Okay. So, well, good. I appreciate you sharing that. It's a little bit different strategy. It's here, good to hear how exactly you're doing it. So you mentioned before that the script that you use in general. Do you want to expound on that a little bit?
Um, it's pretty much the same script every time. The only time it might change is if they come back and say to me, I'm pretty loyal with my current company. I'm not looking to make a change. I'm happy where I'm at. Um, and I'll fire back and say, look, I'm not looking to hire you. At the end of the day, I just want to do a meet and greet. I want to get to know who's out in our industry, who my agents are working with. So, but I will share this with you. I've had more people than not share with me that how loyal they are with their company, not looking to make a change, will end up meeting with me. And you find out a lot more after you start meeting with them because they say one thing, but as I start building that relationship and they feel comfortable, you learn a lot. So,
Yeah, it's there was a study that LinkedIn did a while back. It wasn't just real estate; it was across other industries. But you ask people, are you happy with your position? It's like 80, 85, 90% people are happy, and yet there's a whole bunch of people that move every year. I mean,
right,
so it's
right,
like there's always a little bit of, well, how happy are you? I mean, let's talk about this more. The reality is everybody has problems.
right.
It doesn't matter. So that if you can get those people talking about those problems, then you're going to find things that you wouldn't otherwise. So
I think it's a mindset thing too. I think they want to hear them actually say out loud or maybe even read it in their text that they're happy, they're loyal, they're not looking to make a change. And that makes them feel okay that they've answered that question that way. But then again, they still end up meeting with me and you learn a lot.
stuff happens. Stuff happens. Okay, so let's talk about what happens in that actual appointment. So of course, yeah, get the appointment initially. So just so everyone got a little bit of a frame of reference here. How many appointments did you set last year?
So I went on 240 appointments last year. I hired 24 vet agents, and so that was a
Mhm.
10% capture, closure, success
Yeah.
rate,
Yep.
or
Yep.
whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys use the word vet agents. A lot of people in the industry think of that as experienced agents, but these are people that
Hmm.
have production. They're working for another company, and they took an appointment with you, and you get a lot of them. 280 is a lot of appointments,
Yeah.
and then they eventually came over and worked for you. Okay. So what's when you get into that appointment, you talked a little bit about it in the session. Your objective, it sounds like, is to get them talking
Hmm.
initially, not be high pressure. Tell us a little about that, of how you get them talking. What do you do?
No pressure. And that's how I want it to feel. I want them to feel comfortable meeting me for the first time. I want them to feel like they can open up and communicate and talk about whatever it is they want to talk about. But 90% of the time or 100% of the time, it's about who they are, about their family, how long they've been in the business. And I think the key for me is I have to listen. Like that is one of the most important things for me and those appointments that I have to listen to what they're saying. I want to be able to come back the next appointment, whether it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the road, and be able to talk about something that they brought up in that first meeting because it shows them, oh my God, this guy was really listening to what I was saying. So I think it's super important for me to listen. And I want them to know it's important that I want to get to know who they are. And that's really how the appointments go. Even the second, third, and fourth appointment. I mean, we really don't start talking shop until maybe I feel they're ready to. And a lot of times that just kind of happens organically.
So I hear two things in what you're saying. Is one is you're building rapport here. You're building
Hmm.
rapport with this person. I want to get to know you. I want to, a rapport is I trust you, I respect you. That's the questions that people need answered initially from a psychology perspective. And it sounds like you're getting those questions answered in that first
Mm.
appointment. Secondly, it sounds like you're uncovering pain. What is it this person's struggling with? What is it that they're having trouble with? Is that a fair summary?
And it's not even, it is, that's very fair. And it's not even really asking that. It kind of just happens within the conversation. And so I don't have to say, what don't you like about your company or what do you like about your company? A lot of those things kind of just fall right into place. And so again, I let them lead the conversation. I don't guide it. They help me guide it by leading it. So, and I think that's important. I don't go on these appointments to try to you know, close them on appointment one. I'd be crazy to think that that was going to happen. Has it ever happened? Yes, not very often. So I go into this, knowing that this is a process that's going to take time and I
Yeah.
can't get frustrated.
Yeah, so the mindset, and I think people sense that. They sense
Mhm.
that when you're in the appointment that, hey, I'm not in a hurry. I'm not about this isn't about me getting some kind of accomplished objective accomplished. And I think that kind of oozes out of you,
Right.
and then lets that person down. So so in the how do you personally know whether the appointment's going pretty well and things are heading the right way?
The way it feels, you just know, like sitting there having a conversation with somebody and it feels good, it feels right. They're receptive, they engage. Um, you just know there's a trust that starts to develop and it's a good feeling. And so I kind of know that based off of that first appointment, how well or not well it's going, that I'm going to get my next appointment. But that's really kind of where I'm at with it. I listen, I let them, talk about whatever they want to talk about, and it just feels right.
Good, good. And I get it. It's just one other quick question on it. What's percentage of the time would you say that you're talking versus the other person talking?
Well, let me just say this: if I was the only one talking, I may not be interested in that recruit. I'll say that. I would say they probably talk 75% of the time versus my 25%. It may go 50-50 at times, but I really want them to feel comfortable and to be able to talk. I mean, I hired a Remax agent earlier this year, and the that probably was one of my most favorite interactions that I've ever had with a veteran agent because this guy was so humble and so thankful and so I don't know, just so appreciative of our meeting and our time and my time. And, when he finally came on board, he was just ecstatic over the moon and he's still super excited. So that's rewarding to me. Like I'm super passionate about this and what I do and building these relationships. And I think my success is partially because of that. And it shows when I'm in these appointments. It's
Got it.
real.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get it. How do you close the appointments? How do you close the appointments? Like the first appointment, what do you do?
So, when we're winding down and the lunch is over and I'm like, look, I would like to continue this conversation and I'd like to set up my next appointment. Let's look at our calendars. We always set that appointment. I'd never walk away without doing that. Um, and then, after the third, fourth, fifth, whatever it is, when I know that it's going right and it feels right, I'll say to them, hey, our next appointment, I'd like to put a transition plan in front of you just to kind of see what I'm willing to offer you, see if it makes sense and see if it would work. And I've never had nobody say no. They all are open to that. But I don't do that appointment one or two or three. Like it's a process because I don't want it to seem like I'm rushing it.
Got it. So of these, what was it, 240 appointments or
240 appointments, yeah.
240 appointments. So some of these are multiple appointments, right?
Yes,
So it isn't like this 240 first appointments that were here. So
correct.
these are multiple appointments. Got it.
Correct.
Got it. So that makes it more doable, I think, because you're having these other appointments, which is probably, I'm guessing, the part of the process you enjoy is getting someone the second appointment, the third appointment,
Oh
having,
yeah.
I mean,
It's a challenge for me. Like I'm very competitive, and if there's somebody that I really want on our team and our culture that I know is the right fit, I don't give up easy, Ben.
Good, good. Let's talk about converting those folks to hires then. That's kind of you have yeah, we talked about prospecting. How do you get them in the initial appointment? You have how that initial appointment goes. You have some follow-ups after that. So let's end of the process there. How do we get someone from that appointment stage to crossing the finish line?
Well, if they're willing, at some point, if they're willing to look at my transition plan, and it may not be the right plan right away, I might have to tweak it. They might, counter it or we negotiate a bit. But if I know they're willing to at least look at a transition plan, I know that they're willing to potentially entertain coming on board. And so when we get to that point and I put it in front of them and we go over it, um, it's usually okay. Well, let me think about it. Let me talk to my spouse. Let me, sleep on it, whatever the case may be. And we'll have another appointment already scheduled as well. And then that's kind of where we finalize it or close it and figure out if they're definitely going to come on board and then what that timeline looks like. If they've got a couple of deals in the pipeline that they want to get closed before they make a change, or if there's nothing really going on and they can go now. So it depends on those types of things as well, on when we make the decision on what date they come on board. But that's kind of how it looks towards the end of closing them and getting them on board.
Okay, so you eventually get down focus on the transition plan, always set another appointment, and eventually get them to the point where hey, let's get the paperwork started to get this rolling.
Yeah, and like I said, I never force that transition plan right away. That's a process down the road. But I know if they're willing to look at that and I can get that in front of them, we're getting close. So then that's probably whenever I maybe try to go for the close a little more at that point than I do in the beginning.
Got it, got it. So if you have if you have through this process here, so we have the 240 appointments, right? It's not 240 prospects really that
Right.
you've got at this stage. What percentage would you say of people that are initially engaged in the process actually become hired? Was it
Uh, that's a good question. I don't know.
Well, we know it's 10% of it
It
if
is
you had
10%
24
because, right.
of the total amount of appointments, but is it like 1 in 4, you think, or 1 in 5, or that really end up doing this?
I'm gonna say probably maybe 1 out of 5, maybe 1 out of 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I see here is in this process is that you're making a commitment to have a lot of appointments, uh, and you're sticking with people that are showing some life along the way. You're willing to have 3, 4, 5, 6 appointments,
Yes.
and then you're taking them through the process and not giving up on them. You're a pretty competitive person, so you're not
Hmm.
giving up on them once they're showing these signs of life. But in the end, it's probably 1 in 5, 1 in 6, something like that.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. So, so, um, so obviously you're viewing the recruiting process here as a long game. You don't see it as transactional. So what's the average kind of time frame it takes, would you say, to get someone across, hired?
So I'm going to say from start to finish, I probably meet with somebody, uh, I'm going to say maybe 6, 7 times. Sometimes it definitely takes longer than that. I've done some M&As, I've done, worked on some acquisitions, and those take obviously way longer. I worked on one a few years ago that I met with the broker owner for 3.5 years before they decided to make the change. So those are obviously handled a little differently. But I would say probably I go on anywhere from 6, 7, 8 appointments with the same person before we really get to a point of, okay, are we really going to consider making a change? And if we are, okay, this is what it looks like, and here's the transition plan.
Got it. So how much time goes by typical on that kind of that arrangement?
Uh, Probably a couple months.
Couple months. Okay. So
Yeah,
these
because if I meet with somebody this week, I'm probably going to meet with them in 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks, depending upon their schedule and my schedule.
right.
And then sometimes it's on the calendar, we get it booked, but then something comes up on my side or their side and we have to reschedule, which is, can be frustrating, but as long as I can at least reschedule it, it's a win for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, have you ever had a situation, or I'm sure you have, where you get down the process a while and then the person kind of ghosts you, or they aren't connecting with you anymore. Does that ever happen? And if so, how do you handle it?
Every once in a while. And if it does, I'll reach out and just, check in, see what's going on. If it goes total cold and I don't get any response, then I know that obviously they're not interested, or something in their world might have happened. It could have been personal, it could have been business, whatever. And so, I've learned that you have to be patient in this business when it comes to recruiting. Because it is a long game, and I don't go into it thinking that I'm gonna close somebody today, tomorrow, the next day. It's my mindset has change, that this is a process that takes a while. I never used to think that, Ben. When I first started in leadership and recruiting, I'm like, man, I got to get him today. I got to get him today. And it can be frustrating, but I think the more I've done this, the more I spend time doing it, I understand that it's a process and it takes a while.
So in the process, and I noticed this in coaching when we did group coaching with your managers, I noticed that you had a lot of appointments going all the time, and so there was always somebody that was kind of at the end of the process.
Yeah.
It'd be probably a couple of months that were
Right.
near the end. You're always working on the next front of the process as well. So it sounds like it's a process of just keeping everything going, keeping a pipeline active and going.
Yep. And adding to it. I mean, because the pipeline will eventually, if I'm recruiting some of these people, now that part of the pipeline, in a sense, is dried up. I've got to keep adding to that pipeline. As well as it's a numbers game. The more reach outs I do, the more appointments I get, the more chances I have to getting agents on board. If I only have 5 people in my pipeline, I may not recruit anybody. So yeah, it's just the more I do, the better off the odds are.
Great. Well, it's been a great discussion. I think a lot of people are going to learn and be more committed to the process, being consistent, taking away some good tactics that you using as well. If you had to offer kind of one piece of advice, to people who are in your role, maybe just starting or they're struggling with it, they're having a hard time
Mhm.
staying consistent. What would you tell them for those folks who are watching today?
Probably two things. One is just you cannot get frustrated. When I say it's a long process, and it takes time, you've got to make sure that you just go into every appointment with your A game. Body language and facial expressions mean a lot, and those can be read into very easily. So if you go into an appointment thinking that I got to get this closed within the first couple appointments, that's the wrong mindset and the wrong attitude to have. You've got to go into it A game every time. You got to be passionate. You got to be, listen and all those things that, make that appointment special, because if you go into it with the wrong attitude, with the wrong mindset, you're never gonna be able to recruit anybody. And my second part of that would be you got to get that next appointment before you leave. You have to. If you don't get it then, it's so hard to get it down the road. So I lock them in before I leave.
Good stuff. Well, Darrell, thank you so much for sharing all this today, and for those you're listening in, take what you learned today and go make a difference.